Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the huge room. The room was shaped like a circle. All around him sat creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some had long tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales that changed color when they moved. A few had multiple eyes that blinked at different times. Jake wore his dark blue uniform with golden buttons. On his chest was a badge that showed he worked for the United Earth Defense Force. He was the only human in the room. The other beings stared at him with looks that mixed curiosity and hate. The room itself was massive. The walls went up so high that Jake had to tilt his head back to see the ceiling. Strange lights floated in the air without being attached to anything. The floor was made of some kind of smooth stone. It seemed to glow from within. At the front of the room sat the most important aliens. They sat on chairs that floated 3 feet off the ground. Their clothes were fancy and covered in jewels and metals that Jake had never seen before. These were the leaders of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zarthik stood up from his floating chair. He was tall and thin with 6 arms and a head that looked like it belonged on a giant insect. When he spoke, his mouth made clicking sounds. A small device on his chest turned those clicks into words that Jake could understand. "Human representative," Zarthik said. His voice sounded cold and mechanical through the translator. "You stand before the Galactic Council. We have made a decision about your species and your planet." Jake kept his face calm. He had been trained for this moment. For months, Earth's government had known this day would come. The aliens had been watching humanity for years. They had studied human technology and counted human spaceships. They thought they knew everything about Earth's military power. "The Council has voted," Zarthik continued. "Your planet Earth sits at an important location in space. Ships from many worlds must pass through your solar system to reach other parts of the galaxy. The Council needs to control this area." Jake felt his heart beat faster, but he did not let it show on his face. This was exactly what Earth's leaders had feared would happen. "Therefore," Zarthik said, "the Council orders all humans to leave Earth within 72 standard hours. You will be moved to the mining colonies on Kepler 442b. There you will work to dig metals and crystals for the Council." A low murmur went through the room. Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Others simply stared at Jake with their strange eyes. Jake looked around the room at the 47 different species represented in the Council. Each one had probably gone through this same process when the Council first found them. Each one had been forced to give up their home world and become slaves. "Ambassador," Jake said in a steady voice, "this is a very important message. I need to send it to my government on Earth. As is normal in these situations, I request the full 72 hours to bring back Earth's official answer." Zarthik's mandibles clicked together in what Jake guessed was amusement. "Of course, human. Take your time. Send your message. But know that the Council's decision cannot be changed. No species has ever refused a Council order." Jake nodded. "I understand. May I use the communication room to contact Earth?" "You may," Zarthik said, "but do not think about trying to call for help. Your species has maybe 50 ships that can travel between stars. The Council has over 10,000 ships in this area alone. Even if every human ship came here, you would lose quickly." Jake walked toward the door that led to the communication room. As he passed the rows of alien representatives, he heard them talking quietly among themselves. Some made sounds that were clearly laughter. Others spoke in languages that sounded like music or like machines breaking down. One alien that looked like a large cat with purple fur spoke to its neighbor. "Another primitive species thinks they can fight the Council. They never learn." A creature that seemed to be made of living crystal replied, "At least this one is not crying or begging. The humans might have some dignity when they surrender." Jake kept walking and did not react to their words. He had been trained to expect this kind of talk. The aliens saw humans as just another weak species that would give up without a fight. The communication room was small and filled with equipment that looked both advanced and ancient. Jake sat down at the console and began typing his message. To anyone watching, it would look like a normal report to Earth's government. But hidden in the message was a special code. The code was simple but effective. Certain words were spelled wrong. Some sentences had extra punctuation marks. If someone just read the message quickly, they would not notice anything strange. But Admiral Lisa Carter, back on Earth, would know exactly what the code meant. Jake typed the most important part of his message. The Council has given us 72 hours to accept their offer of relocation. I am confident that Earth will give them an appropriate response. I will remain here to deliver our government's final answer. Hidden in those words was the real message. Protocol blackout authorized. Implement immediately. Jake sent the message and watched as it disappeared into the communication network that connected all the worlds in the galaxy. The message would reach Earth in less than an hour. By then, things would start moving very fast. He walked back to the main chamber where the aliens were still talking and laughing. Ambassador Zarthik looked up as Jake approached. Is your message sent? Zarthik asked. Yes, Jake replied. Earth's government will consider the Council's generous offer. I will have their answer for you in exactly 72 hours. Zarthik's translator made a sound that might have been laughter. Good. Use that time wisely, human. Help your people understand that resistance is pointless. The Council has been expanding across the galaxy for over 2,000 years. We have conquered species that were far more advanced than humans. Your weapons cannot hurt our ships. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Jake nodded politely. I will make sure they understand the situation completely. What Jake did not say was that the situation was very different from what the Council believed. For 40 years ever. Since humans had first detected alien signals in space, Earth had been preparing for this exact moment. The Council thought they knew about human military power, but they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. The real strength of humanity was hidden in the darkness between the stars, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Council had made their move. Now it was Earth's turn. As Jake stood in the chamber surrounded by aliens who thought they had already won. He felt a cold smile try to form on his lips. He fought it down and kept his expression neutral. There would be time for smiling later. A 72-hour countdown had begun. The Council expected humanity to surrender. Instead, they were about to discover what happened when you're threatened. The wrong species. Earth was about to respond, and that response would change everything. Admiral Lisa Carter stood deep underground in a room that did not officially exist. The room was built inside a mountain in Colorado, so far down that even the most powerful alien scanners could not detect it. Around her, dozens of screens showed the positions of every human ship in known space. But the screens showed something else, too. They showed ships that the aliens had never seen. Ships that had been built in secret for 40 years. Ships that were about to change the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral, said Colonel Matt Rodriguez as he walked up to her. We just received Jake's message. The Council gave us exactly what we expected. Total surrender or forced relocation. Lisa nodded. She had gray hair and lines around her eyes from years of planning for this moment. And our response? The Shadow. Fleet is ready. All 300 ships are in position. The Council fleet is exactly where our spies said it would be. Matt's voice was calm, but Lisa could hear the excitement underneath. Lisa looked at the main screen. It showed a map of the local area of space. Red dots marked the positions of Council ships. Blue dots showed the official human fleet that the aliens knew about. But there were also green dots that only appeared on the screen. Those were the ships of the Shadow Fleet. "Dr. Karen Phillips is ready to brief you," Matt said. A new screen came to life, showing a woman with short brown hair, standing in what looked like a spaceship factory. Behind her, massive ships were being moved by robotic arms. "Admiral Carter," Dr. Phillips said, "I'm reporting from the Titan shipyards. Our new fusion drives are working perfectly. We can have the entire Shadow Fleet at the attack point in 18 hours. Lisa had known Karen for 20 years. She was the smartest person Lisa had ever met. When the first alien ship had crashed on Earth 40 years ago, Karen had been part of the team that studied it. She had learned more about alien technology in 1 year than the aliens probably thought possible. "What about our weapons?" Lisa asked. "Better than we hoped," Karen said with a smile. "The plasma cannons we built using alien technology are actually more powerful than what the Council ships use. Our energy shields can stop their strongest weapons. And our ships are faster than anything they have." Lisa felt a cold satisfaction. The Council thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They had no idea that humans had been studying their technology for decades. "How many Council ships are we facing?" Lisa asked Matt. Checked his data pad. Intelligence reports show 400 ships in their main fleet. They're all grouped together at the hyperspace junction near Jupiter. They're not even trying to spread out or defend themselves. "Why would they?" Lisa said. "They think we only have 50 ships. They probably see this as target practice." The truth was very different. When the first alien ship had crashed on Earth, the world's governments had made a decision. They would appear weak while secretly becoming strong. Every human ship that the aliens saw was old and slow on purpose. The real fleet was hidden in the asteroid belt, built using stolen alien technology. "Admiral," said a new voice. Captain Ryan Bell appeared on another screen. He was young with blonde hair and the kind of confident smile that came from knowing. "You had the best ship in the galaxy. The Defiance is ready. All Shadow Fleet captains are reporting ready for combat." Lisa looked around the room at her staff. These people had worked for years to prepare for this moment. They had built ships in secret. They had trained pilots without the aliens knowing. They had created an entire fleet that existed only in the shadows. "Are we sure about the Council's ship positions?" Lisa asked. "Absolutely," Matt replied. "Agent Susan Davis has been working undercover on the Council ship Hegemony for 3 years. She confirmed their exact positions this morning. They're still in the same formation they use for intimidation displays." Lisa almost smiled. The Council was so confident that they had not even bothered to prepare for battle. They were sitting in space like targets at a shooting range. "What about their backup?" "Fleets?" Lisa asked. "The nearest Council reinforcements are 4 days away at maximum speed," Matt said. "By the time they arrive, this will be over." Lisa walked to the center of the room. On the walls around her were pictures of Earth, the Moon, and the space stations where millions of humans lived and worked. The Council wanted to take all of this away. They wanted to make humans into slaves. "Open a channel to all Shadow Fleet commanders," Lisa said. The screens around the room filled with faces. Men and women of all ages, all races, all backgrounds. They were the best pilots humanity had ever produced. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. "This is Admiral Carter," Lisa said. "You all know why we're here. For 40 years, we've been preparing for this day. The Council thinks they can take our homes and make us into their slaves. They're about to learn that they picked the wrong species to threaten." She paused and looked at each face on the screens. "Our mission is simple. We're going to destroy their fleet so completely that the galaxy will never threaten Earth again. We're going to show them what happens when you corner a species that refuses to give up." Captain Beth Turner, commanding the heavy cruiser Vengeance, spoke up. "Admiral, what are our rules of engagement?" "Simple," Lisa replied. "Any ship that fires on humans or refuses to surrender will be destroyed. We're not here to conquer. We're here to make sure no one can ever threaten Earth again." Captain Amy Foster, whose ship Phantom was so advanced it could become invisible, asked, "What about prisoners?" "We'll accept surrenders," Lisa said. "But only after they understand that the age of Council dominance is over." Lisa looked at the countdown timer on the main screen. 61 hours until the Council's deadline. But the attack would come much sooner than that. "All ships, begin movement to attack positions," Lisa ordered. "We go in fast and hard. The Council fleet won't know what hit them." The screens showed the green dots of the Shadow Fleet beginning to move. 300 ships, each one more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. Ships with weapons that could punch through any armor. Ships with shields that could stop any attack. Ships fast enough to dance around the clumsy Council vessels. "Admiral," Matt said quietly, "are you sure about this? Once we attack, there's no going back. The galaxy will never be the same." Lisa looked at him with steel in her eyes. "The galaxy stopped being the same the moment they threatened our children. We didn't start this fight, but we're going to finish it." She turned back to the screens, showing the Shadow Fleet. "This is Admiral Carter to all ships. Execute Protocol Blackout. Show them what humanity can do when we stop pretending to be weak." The response came back from 300 ships at once. "Roger that, Admiral. Time to take off the gloves." Lisa watched as her ships disappeared from normal space and entered hyperspace. In 18 hours, they would drop out of hyperspace right on top of the Council fleet. The aliens would have maybe 30 seconds to realize what was happening before. The shooting started. The Council thought they were dealing with a primitive species. They were about to discover that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was a human who had been given time to prepare. Earth's response was coming, and it would be more savage than anything the Council had ever imagined. The Council's deadline was set for 0800 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Zarthek stood in the communication center of the Council's flagship, the Sovereign. Around him, other Council members waited to hear humanity's surrender. Humans will give up," said Council leader Vextar, ancient being who had lived for over 600 years. "They always do. No species has ever refused our demands." Zarthik nodded. His translator was ready to broadcast the human surrender to every world in the galaxy. It would be another example of the Council's power got. At exactly 0800 hours, the communication system came to life. But the face that appeared on the screen was not Jake Morrison. It was a human woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She wore a military uniform that the Council had never seen before. "This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. Her voice was calm but carried a promise of violence. "The people of Earth have considered your ultimatum. Our response is as follows: no." The Council chamber fell silent. No one had ever simply said no to a Council demand. "Furthermore," Admiral Carter continued, "Earth rejects your authority over our species. We reject your claim to our homeworld. And we reject your right to exist as a threat to free peoples anywhere in the galaxy." Before anyone in the Council could respond, alarms began screaming throughout their ships. The space around their fleet, which had been empty moments before, suddenly filled with ships. Captain Ryan Bell sat in the command chair of the Defiance, watching his tactical display light up with targets. The Council fleet was spread out in a loose formation, just as intelligence had said they would be. They were not prepared for battle. "All Shadow Fleet ships, this is Bell," he said into his communicator. "Weapons free. Show them what we've been building for 40 years. The attack began with a coordinated strike that the Council fleet never saw coming. 300 human ships opened fire at exactly the same moment. Plasma beams and energy torpedoes crossed space faster than the aliens could react. The Council. Ship Hegemony, a massive vessel that was supposed to be invincible, took 6 direct hits in the first 3 seconds. Its shields, which had never failed before, collapsed immediately. The ship began to break apart. "Impossible," whispered Commander Kilter from the bridge of the Hegemony. "Our shields can stop anything." He was wrong. The human weapons were based on technology stolen from the Council's own ships, but improved and made more powerful. The humans had taken 40 years to perfect what the Council had used for centuries. Captain Beth Turner commanded the Vengeance, a heavy cruiser that was designed to destroy large targets. She had been assigned to attack the Council's flagship. "Target the Sovereign," she ordered. "Let's remove their command structure." The Vengeance fired its main guns. The plasma bolts struck the Sovereign's bridge, punching through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. The Council's flagship began to spin out of control, its command center destroyed. On the Sovereign, Council leader Vexstar found himself thrown to the floor as his ship shook from impacts. Around him, other Council members were screaming in languages he did not recognize. How are their weapons so powerful? Vexstar shouted over the alarms. Ambassador Zarthik was trying to access the tactical display, but most of the ship's systems were failing. "The humans must have stolen our technology. But this is impossible. They shouldn't be able to improve on our designs." They were wrong again. The humans had not just stolen alien technology. They had made it better. Dr. Karen Phillips and her team had spent decades studying every piece of alien equipment they could find. They had found weaknesses that the aliens never knew existed. Captain Amy Foster piloted the Phantom, a stealth ship that could become invisible to alien sensors. She had been assigned to hunt down any Council ships that tried to escape. "This is Phantom," she reported. "I have 3 Council ships trying to run. Should I stop them?" "Negative," came the reply from Admiral Carter. "Let them go. We want survivors to tell the galaxy what happened here." The battle was not really a battle at all. It was a massacre. The Council ships were slow, clumsy, and completely unprepared. The human ships were fast, deadly, and had been training for this moment for decades. Captain Steve Parker commanded the Liberty, a battleship that was larger than most Council vessels. He watched his weapons officer destroy target after target with casual precision. "Sir," the weapons officer reported, "the Council fleet is trying to surrender." "Too late for that," Parker replied. "They had their chance to leave us alone." But Admiral Carter's voice came over the communication system. "All ships begin accepting surrenders. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to send a message." The message was clear. In 17 minutes, the most powerful fleet the Council had ever assembled was reduced to burning wreckage floating in space. Of the 400 Council ships that had come to intimidate humanity, only 37 survived. Most of those were so damaged they could barely move. Jake Morrison watched the battle from the Council chamber. The aliens around him sat in stunned silence as the reports came in. Their invincible fleet had been destroyed by a species they thought was primitive. "This is impossible," Zarthik said, his translator making his voice sound small and scared. "Your intelligence said they had 50 ships. Primitive ships." "Our intelligence was wrong," Jake replied. "Did you really think we would show you our true strength while you were threatening to enslave us?" The tactical display in the Council chamber showed the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields where proud Council ships had been. Human ships moving among the wreckage, rescuing survivors and securing prisoners. "How long have you been preparing for this?" asked Council leader Vexstar. His voice was barely a whisper. "Since the day we discovered we weren't alone in the universe," Jake said. "Humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. You gave us 40 years to prepare for the worst. The display screen came alive again, showing Admiral Carter's face. But now she was not alone. Behind her, Jake could see dozens of other human officers. The command center of the human fleet was massive and clearly built for war. Members of the Galactic Council, Admiral Carter said, let me make humanity's position clear. We tried diplomacy. We tried peaceful contact. You responded with threats and ultimatums. She paused, letting her words sink in. Your fleet is destroyed. Your authority is broken. The age of Council dominance is over. The aliens in the chamber looked around at each other with fear in their eyes. Some species had been part of the Council for over 1,000 years. They had never imagined that their power could be challenged. But we are not conquerors, Admiral Carter continued. We are not here to enslave your people or take your worlds. We are here to ensure that what you tried to do to us never happens to anyone else. Captain Ryan Bell's voice joined the transmission. This is the captain of the Defiance. We have secured the battlefield. Council casualties are heavy, but we are rescuing survivors. Human casualties, 0. 0. The word echoed through the council chamber. The humans had destroyed the council's fleet without losing a single ship. It was a level of military superiority that the galaxy had never seen. What happens now? Asked Vextar. Now, Jake Morrison said, we negotiate, but not as equals. Not anymore. You came here to dictate terms to humanity. Instead, you're going to listen to our terms. The transformation was complete. In less than a day, humanity had gone from a species facing extinction to the dominant military power in the galaxy. The council members who had gathered to witness Earth's surrender instead found themselves at the mercy of the species they had tried to enslave. The age of human dominance had begun, and it had begun with a demonstration of power that would be remembered for thousands of years. The Council had learned too late that when you threaten a species known for its innovation and determination, you don't get surrender, you get revolution. The Council chamber had never been so quiet. 47 different species sat in their floating chairs, staring at the screens that showed the complete destruction of their fleet. The beings who had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years now looked small and afraid. Ambassador Zarthik's mandibles clicked nervously as he tried to understand what had happened. His species had been part of the Council for 800 years. They had seen the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. But they had never seen anything like this. The tactical reports must be wrong, he said, his voice shaking. No species could build 300 advanced warships in secret. Our spies have been watching the humans for decades. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the chamber, exactly where he had been when the Council delivered their ultimatum. But now everything was different. The aliens who had looked at him with contempt now avoided his eyes. Your spies saw exactly what we wanted them to see, Jake said calmly. Every ship you observed was old and slow on purpose. We built our real fleet where you couldn't find it. Council leader Vextar, who had lived through the conquest of 17 different species, found his voice. How is this possible? Our sensors can detect ships being built anywhere in your solar system. Can they detect ships being built in the asteroid belt? Jake asked. Can they see through the radio interference near Jupiter? Can they penetrate the sensor shadows behind your own monitoring stations? The answer was no, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The humans had been using the Council's own blind spots against them. Dr. Karen Phillips appeared on the main screen, still standing in the Titan shipyards. Behind her, massive construction bays stretched into the distance. Council members, she said, I thought you might like to see where we built your destruction. The camera pulled back to show the true scale of the shipyards. They were enormous, carved into asteroids and hidden behind sensor screens. Hundreds of ships were still under construction, and thousands of workers moved between them. "We've been building here for 35 years, Dr. Phillips continued. "Every time your spies reported that humans were mining asteroids for metals, they were actually watching us build warships. We turned your own intelligence reports into our cover story." Ambassador Zarthik felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough," Admiral Carter said, as her face appeared on another screen. "The 300 ships you just fought were only the first wave. We have over 1,000 ships ready for combat, with more being built every day." The number hit the Council like a physical blow. 1,000 ships. The Council's entire combined fleet across all their worlds was only about 1,500 ships, and most of those were old designs that were clearly inferior to what the humans had built. "But more importantly," Admiral Carter continued, "we have ships in positions you never suspected." New screens came alive around the chamber. Each one showed a different star system. Each one showed human ships that had been hiding there for years. Captain Amy Foster transmitted from just outside the Council's home system. "This is the Phantom. We have been monitoring Council Central for 18 months. Your capital defenses are impressive, but they won't stop us if we decide to attack." Another screen showed Captain Steve Parker near the hegemony industrial worlds. "This is the Liberty. We've been watching your shipyards for 2 years. You build good ships, but not good enough." One by one, human ships revealed themselves throughout Council space. They had been infiltrating alien territory for years, studying defenses, mapping patrol routes, and preparing for this moment. Council leader Vextar stared at the screens in horror. "You've been spying on us for years. You've been inside our space, watching our every move." "We learned from the best," Jake said. "You've been spying on us since first contact. The difference is, we're better at it." The truth was becoming clear to the Council. They had not just underestimated human military power. They had underestimated human intelligence, human patience, and human ability to plan for the long term. "What do you want?" asked Ambassador Zarthik. His voice was barely a whisper. "Justice," Jake replied. "For 40 years, you've been planning to enslave my species. For 2,000 years, you've been enslaving other species. That ends now." Admiral Carter's image grew larger on the main screen. Forced relocation programs end immediately. Every species that was moved from their homeworld will be given the option to return. The tribute system is abolished. And most importantly, the Council's authority to make unilateral decisions about other species is over. "You're talking about destroying everything we've built," Vextar said. "No," Jake corrected. "We're talking about destroying everything you've stolen. The Council built its power on the backs of enslaved species. We're going to free them." The aliens in the chamber began to whisper among themselves. Some were angry, others were scared, but all of them were beginning to understand that their old way of life was over. "What about our worlds?" asked a representative from the Crystalline Collective. "What about our people?" "Your people will be free to live as they choose," Admiral Carter said. "But they will not be free to enslave others. The age of conquest is over." Ambassador Zarthik tried one last time to assert Council authority. "You cannot simply change the order of the galaxy. There are treaties, agreements, systems of law that have existed for millennia, built on the threat of violence," Jake said, "maintained by fear, enforced by fleets that no longer exist." The screens around the chamber showed the aftermath of the battle. Human ships were rescuing survivors from the destroyed Council fleet, but they were also capturing data cores, communication records, and intelligence files. "We now have access to all of your records," Admiral Carter said. "We know about the concentration camps on Kepler 442b. We know about the slave markets on Rigel 7. We know about the species that were driven to extinction when they refused to surrender. The council members looked at each other with growing panic. Their crimes were being exposed, their secrets revealed. But we also know about the resistance movements, Admiral Carter continued. The species that have been fighting against council rule for decades. The underground networks that have been helping refugees escape. We've been in contact with them for years. This was the final blow. The council realized that humanity had not just built a fleet in secret. They had built an alliance of every species that the council had oppressed. The galaxy is changing, Jake said. The question is whether you want to be part of that change or be swept aside by it. Council leader Vextar, who had ruled for centuries, found himself asking a question he had never thought he would ask. What are your terms? Simple, Admiral. Carter replied. Dissolve the council. End the forced relocations. Free the slave species. And accept that humanity is now the dominant power in this galaxy. The transformation was complete. The species that had come to witness humanity's surrender were now negotiating the terms of their own survival. The council that had ruled through fear and intimidation for 2 millennia had been broken in a single day. And if we refuse? Vextar asked. Captain Ryan Bell's voice came through the speakers. Then we'll make the decision for you. The age of asking permission is over. The council had no words. They had no response. They had no choice. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the same council chamber, but everything had changed. The floating chairs were gone, replaced by simple seats arranged in a circle. The walls no longer showed symbols of council power. Instead, they displayed the flags of free worlds. The Galactic Council was dead. In its place was the Galactic Alliance, and for the first time in recorded history, every species had an equal voice. Jake now wore a different uniform. Instead of the dark blue of the United Earth Defense Force, he wore the silver and gold of the Alliance Diplomatic Corps. On his chest was a new badge that showed a circle of stars representing all the free worlds. The motion passes, Jake announced. The Kepler 442b mining colonies will be shut down within 30 days. All workers will be given the choice to return to their homeworlds or remain as free citizens. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species nodded in agreement. These were not the same aliens who had once voted to enslave humanity. Some were old council members who had accepted the new order. Others were representatives of species that had been freed from council rule. Ambassador Zarthik was still there, but he looked different. His fancy robes were gone, replaced by simple clothes. His floating chair had been replaced by a regular seat. Most importantly, his attitude had changed completely. The hegemony accepts the Alliance decision, he said. We will provide transport ships to help with the relocation. It was hard to believe this was the same being who had once demanded humanity's surrender. But the destruction of the Council fleet had changed everything. The species that had once ruled through fear now worked together as equals. Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on the main screen from her command center on Earth. Behind her, the screens showed Alliance ships patrolling the galaxy. Human ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of other species. The liberation of the Rigel 7 slave markets is complete, she reported. Over 2 million beings have been freed. The vegan collective has volunteered to help with temporary housing, while people decide where they want to go. Jake felt a sense of satisfaction. The slave markets that had operated for centuries were finally closed. Species that had been bought and sold like property were now free to choose their own destiny. What about the resistance movements? Asked Dr. Karen Phillips, who now served as the Alliance's chief technology officer. Most have agreed to join the Alliance, Admiral Carter replied. The underground networks that fought against Council rule are now working openly to help rebuild. Captain Amy Foster is coordinating with them. Captain Foster's image appeared on a side screen. She was standing on the bridge of the Phantom, but the ship was no longer running secret missions. Now it was part of the Alliance fleet that kept the peace. The former resistance leaders are eager to help, she reported. They have decades of experience in organizing free societies. They're teaching other species how to govern themselves. Jake looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. 6 months ago, most of these species had been slaves or subjects of the Council. Now they were making their own decisions about their future. The Tau Ceti system has requested alliance. Membership, announced Representative Kella from the Aquatic Federation. They want protection from the remaining Council loyalists. Jake nodded. Not every species had accepted the new order peacefully. Some former Council worlds still believed they could return to the old ways. They were wrong, but they were still dangerous. Motion approved, Jake said. Admiral Carter, can we provide protection for Tau Ceti? Already done, Lisa replied. Captain Steve Parker and the Liberty are en route. Any Council loyalists who threaten Tau Ceti will regret it. The transformation of the galaxy had not been without violence. Some species had tried to maintain their own small empires after the Council fell. They learned quickly that the Alliance fleet was even more powerful than the old Council forces. Captain Ryan Bell appeared on another screen, reporting from the edge of Alliance space. This is the Defiance. We've intercepted 3 ships trying to restart the slave trade near Proxima. Centauri. They surrendered when they saw our flag. Good, Jake said. Process them according to Alliance law. Equal justice for all species. That was the new rule. No species was above the law, but no species was below it either. The Alliance had written new laws based on freedom and equality, not conquest and exploitation. Council leader Vextar, who now served as a simple representative from his homeworld, spoke up. The transition has been difficult for my people. We are still learning how to live without ruling others. It takes time, Jake said kindly, but your people are adapting. The former hegemony worlds are becoming productive members of the Alliance. It was true. The species that had once been the most aggressive members of the Council were now working hard to make up for their past crimes. They were using their technology and resources to help rebuild the worlds they had once oppressed. Dr. Phillips appeared on the main screen again. I have an update on the technology sharing program. 37 species have contributed to the new research projects. We're making breakthroughs that would have taken centuries under the old system. This was perhaps the greatest change of all. Under the Council, advanced technology was hoarded by the ruling species. Under the Alliance, knowledge was shared freely. The result was an explosion of innovation that benefited everyone. What about Earth? Asked Representative Mora from the Silicon-based collective. How are your people adjusting to their new role? Jake smiled. Earth is doing well. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted to be left alone to live in peace. Now we can do that while helping others achieve the same freedom. It was true. Humanity had become the dominant military. Power in the galaxy, but they had used that power to create freedom, not to build an empire. Earth's leaders had kept their promise to be protectors, not conquerors. Admiral Carter's image grew larger on the screen. All Alliance patrol sectors report normal status. Trade routes are secure. Former slave species are establishing their own governments. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in 2,000 years. Jake felt a deep satisfaction. 6 months ago, humanity had faced extinction. Now the galaxy was free. There is one more matter, Jake said. The memorial. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what memorial he meant. Captain Beth Turner appeared on screen from her ship, the Vengeance. The memorial station is complete. It's positioned at the site of the battle, where the Council fleet was destroyed. Not to celebrate our victory, Jake said carefully, but to remember all the species that suffered under Council rule, and to make sure nothing like the Council ever rises again. The memorial was a massive space station built where the battle had taken place. It contained the names of every species that had been enslaved, every world that had been conquered, and every being that had died fighting for freedom. The dedication ceremony will be next week, Turer continued. Representatives from every Alliance world are invited. Ambassador Zarthik spoke quietly. My species will attend. We have much to remember and much to atone for. Jake nodded respectfully. The former Council species were not enemies anymore. They were partners in building a better galaxy. Before we adjourn, Jake said, I want to read a message from Earth's president. He pulled out a data pad and read, To all the free peoples of the galaxy, 6 months ago, humanity faced extinction. Today, we stand together as equals in an alliance of free worlds. We did not seek this responsibility, but we accept it gladly. We promise to use our strength to protect the weak, our technology to benefit all, and our determination to ensure that freedom endures throughout the galaxy. The chamber erupted in sounds that passed for applause among the various species. Clicking, humming, and harmonic tones filled the air. The Galactic Alliance is adjourned, Jake announced. Until next week, when we gather again as free beings to decide our common future. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Jake remained behind for a moment. He looked at the empty room and remembered the day 6 months ago when he had stood here as the representative of a condemned species. The Council had expected humanity to surrender. Instead, Earth had responded with a counterstrike so savage and complete that it had changed the galaxy forever. The age of conquest was over. The age of freedom had begun, and it had all started with a simple word. No. Humanity had refused to kneel, and in refusing, they had freed not just themselves, but every oppressed species in the galaxy. The Council had truly had no words for what happened to them, because no one had ever imagined that their power could be broken so completely. Jake walked out of the chamber with a smile on his face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, and new freedoms to protect. But today, the galaxy was free, and that was enough. Earth had responded to the Council's ultimatum with devastating force. But more importantly, humanity had responded to the galaxy's suffering with justice, mercy, and hope. The stars themselves seemed brighter now that they shone on free worlds.